The defeat of Harshavardhan by the Chalukya ruler Pulakeshin II was one of the most momentous events in Indian history. In this video, we will look at the circumstances that led to the clash between these two great powers of Indian subcontinent. But before discussing the circumstances, I think it is important to first discuss the date of the battle, as it will help us to understand the entire episode more clearly. If we look at the evidence regarding the date of the battle, the eye-hole inscription of Pulakeshin II is considered the most important, as it clearly mentions Harsha's defeat. Thankfully, we also know that the inscription was written in 634 AD. This means that the battle was fought before 634 AD. From the various Chalukya grants, we learn that Pulakeshin II ascended the Chalukya throne somewhere around 609 and 610 AD. So this means that we have a period from 610 AD to 634 AD in which the battle took place. If we look at what different historians think about the date of the battle, we have basically two views. Some scholars argue that the battle was fought between 610 AD and 613 AD, whereas there are other scholars who argue that the battle was fought between 630 AD and 634 AD. It is because of the lack of sources regarding the battle, we have two differing views about when the battle was fought. But in 2016, a discovery ended this debate once and for all. This was the discovery of a copperplate grant issued by Pulakeshin II. What is even more interesting about this precious copperplate grant is that it was bought from a scrap vendor in Bijapur. In March 2016, Raghuveer Pai, who had bought these copper plates in Bijapur, handed over these plates to Shreenand L. Bapat and Pradeep S. Sohoni. In the next month, that is in April, these two scholars presented this inscription at the Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute in Pune. By reading this grant, Bapat and Sohoni were able to set the time frame of the battle between November 618 AD and February 619 AD. So because of this copperplate grant, now we know that when this battle was fought. Now, if we look at the circumstances under which this battle was fought, we see that both Harshavardhan and Pulakeshin became the ruler of their respective territories under adverse circumstances. Harshavardhan became the ruler of his kingdom, that is the Pushyabhutis and the Maukhris, because of the untimely deaths of the two rulers of these two kingdoms, whereas Pulakeshin had to fight a civil war with his uncle Mangalesh to become the Chalukya ruler. Both Harshavardhan and Pulakeshin wanted to secure Western India and its lucrative trade. And ultimately, it is this region that led to the clash of these two great powers. The small kingdoms that ruled parts of Malwa and Gujarat too became embroiled in this struggle for dominance between Harsha and Pulakeshin. At the start of 7th century AD, Eastern Malwa, with its capital at Vidisha, was ruled by Devgupta. This was the same ruler who would later kill the Maukhri king Grahavarman. Western Malwa, with its capital Ujjain, was controlled by the Kalchuris. In Gujarat, the Maitrikas held their control from the capital city of Vallabhi. The important port of Bharukach was under the control of the Gurjaras, and south of the Gurjara territory lay the kingdom of Lata. Any dominant power, whether it was situated in northern India or southern India, wanted to gain full control of both the Malwa region and Gujarat, as it will allow the full access to the lucrative western trade route. Before Harshavardhan and Pulakeshin, kingdoms from both southern and northern India had tried to establish their foothold in this region. We know from Harsharit that Harsha's father, Prabhakarvardhan, had campaigned against the Latas, Gurjaras and the Malwas. In the Chalukya case, Pulakeshin's predecessor and uncle, Mangalesh, had also campaigned in this region. In one of his grants, Mangalesh boasts of defeating the Kalachuri ruler Buddharaj. Thus, it was clear from the beginning that the two great powers of northern and southern India would eventually clash, and the place where this collision will happen will going to be somewhere in the Malwa or Gujarat region. By around 606 AD, the region of eastern Malwa had already come under the control of Harsha. As we all know, before getting killed by Shashank, Harsha's elder brother Rajyavardhan had defeated the Malwa ruler. In eastern Malwa, the Kalachuris were on the decline, and by around 610 AD, they had disappeared from the political map. But neither Harsh nor Pulakeshin were in a position to take advantage of this situation and gain control of western Malwa. Harsh was busy consolidating his hold over his territory, and Pulakeshin had just won the civil war against his uncle Mangalesh. Before marching northwards, Pulakeshin first had to consolidate his hold over the Chalukya territory. Seeing that the two dominant powers were busy in their internal struggles, the Maitrikas took advantage, and under their ruler Khargraha, they conquered the western Malwa region. With the conquest of western Malwa, the Maitrikas had certainly gained a large territory, but it also meant that they had placed themselves in a delicate position, as they were now sandwiched between two expanding powers, Harsh in the north and Pulakeshin in the south. Apart from the Maitrikas, the Latas and the Gurjaras had also become part of this great game. As Harsh was still embroiled in his internal struggles, it was Pulakeshin who took the first step in this great game. From his eyehole inscription, we learn that after conquering the Konkan region, Pulakeshin conquered the Gurjaras of Bharukach and the Latas. These conquests broke the delicate balance that had existed between Harsha and Pulakeshin until now. Now Harsha had to react. Earlier, he was busy in consolidating his hold over the joint lands of the Maukhris and the Pushyabhutis. But now he was free to tackle the situation in Deccan. His recent campaigns against Shashank, the ruler of Gaud, had earned him the territory of northern Bihar. Although the complete conquest of Gaud was still far off, at least Shashank was not the immediate threat. Harsh now could focus all his energy on the Deccan, as the situation had become serious. With Pulakeshin's conquest of Gurjaras and the Latas, the lucrative ports like Bharukach were in the hands of the Chalukyas. Even Harsha's control over eastern Malwa was under threat. In these troubled times, the importance of the Maitrikas had increased considerably for Harsh. Harsh was probably also worried about the Maitrikas, as Pulakeshin would either try to conquer them or propose that they join hands against Harsha. To understand how the Maitrikas balanced themselves in this struggle between these two great powers, we have to look at their sources. In the various Maitrika grants, the Maitrika ruler Khargraha, or the rulers who came after him, Dharasen III or Dhruvasen II, all do not use any royal titles. This, as we all know, means that the Maitrikas were feudatories. but the question is of whom. The Maitrikas had only two options. They could be the feudatories of Harsh or Pulakeshin. But interestingly, in their grants, they are silent on this issue, which makes our job quite difficult. Thankfully, during this period, a Chinese traveler visited this region and he provides us with some information about the Maitrika rulers. This Chinese traveler was none other than the famous Xuanzang. Xuanzang visited the Maitrika court at Vallabhi around 641-642 AD. And he tells us that the current ruler was the son-in-law of Harsha. This is a valuable detail as it helps us to better understand how the Maitrikas navigated between Harsh and Pulakeshin. From Xuanzang's account, we can clearly say that most likely the Maitrikas were the feudatory of Harsha. By becoming the overlord of the Maitrikas, Harsha had at least secured his right flank. It also meant that Harsh, with the help of their Maitrika allies, could gain control of the ocean ports like Bharukach. This Pulakeshin could not allow to happen. Thus, western trade ports became a focal point of this battle. There are some historians who argue that it was the desire of Harsha to cross Narmada and campaign in southern India that led to this battle with Pulakeshin. I personally do not think that is the case. In my view, it is the western trade and the region of Malwa and Gujarat that was responsible for this clash between Harsh and Pulakeshin. The argument of these scholars that Harsh wanted to conquer the territory south of Narmada also does not make any sense because at this moment when the battle was fought, Harsha had not secured his homeland. We all know that Harsh had only control over northern Bihar, which means that a large portion of eastern India was still under the control of his foremost enemy, Shashank, the ruler of Gauda. No sane military commander would think of campaigning in a far-off land without first destroying all the enemies closer to home. In the same way, Harsha could not think of crossing the Narmada and campaigning in the Deccan before he had destroyed Shashank. Thus, the battle of Pulakeshin and Harshavardhan was over the region of Malwa and Gujarat. Now, it could be argued that if Harsha had won the battle, he would eventually try to conquer the territory south of the Narmada. But this will happen only after securing the core of his empire from his eastern enemy, that is Shashank. From Pulakeshin's eye-hole inscription, it appears that the battle was fought on the banks of river Narmada. But we are not sure whether it was the southern bank or the northern bank. Apart from this vague detail, we do not have any information about the different tactics that these two powers used during this battle. We only know that eventually it was Pulakeshin who won the battle. If we look at Harsha's record, there is no mention of this battle. Xuanzang does talk about the fact that the ruler of Maharashtra, that is the Chalukya ruler Pulakeshin II, is not under the control of Harsha. But even Xuanzang does not mention this battle. We know about this battle only because of Pulakeshin, as he had mentioned it in his eye-hole inscription and the various grants. Interestingly, even after the Chalukyas, the memory of this battle had survived. We find that various Deccan powers like the Rashtrakutas had talked about this clash between Harsha and Pulakeshin. Now, to know more about this period, do watch this playlist where I talk about the political history of the post-Gupta period. If you like this channel, do subscribe. Thank you for watching.